Today's video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Check the link in the description down below to see how you can maintain your internet privacy, or if you're out of the country and you want to watch something like Netflix or whatever, and your favorite shows are on a different country's Netflix, you can use ExpressVPN and it will actually allow you to watch whatever shows you prefer in whatever country. It has a very easy to use interface, and all you have to do is click one button and it will connect you to the best available option for your internet. And if you're a bit skeptical about ExpressVPN, I did a review of it before I was even partnered with them, and I was very happy with the service at the time, and I'm still very happy with the service to this very day, and it's been at least a year since then, or even longer than that, I'm not even sure, but yeah, if you're interested in that, you can check that out if you want. The link will be down below. Anyway, thank you again to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. Now, you guys can actually watch the real video. Hello, what's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about the Valencia update, rework, whatever it is you want to call it. But essentially, the Valencian areas got reworked to the trash is so high now. Like Basham's is like 14K, Centaurs is like 21,000, Sulfur Mine is like 18,000. Pretty much the trash update has made Valencia incredibly relevant at the moment. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to test every single area because like at the moment it's a super war zone over there in most areas. Like Sulfur Mine, completely just ungrindable. Like if you're in a lower tier guild or whatever, you're just gonna get destroyed. Like you're instantly gonna get decked by someone, and then you're fighting more than grinding. Like that's how ridiculous these spots can actually be. I have tested a couple areas though. I tested Basham's, I tested Centaurs, I tested Basilisk Den. These areas are actually still pretty relevant. I would say that they're not as good as Sulfur Mine or Pilaku, or Centaurs is actually pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of fuck with Centaurs, I'm gonna keep it real. But the problem with Centaurs is that the trash per hour, depending on your class, which this applies to most spots, depending on what kind of class you are playing, you will pull more trash than pretty much any other class in the game. Like for me, I'm a Zerker, so going to a Valencia spot, the only one that makes sense is really high density areas like Gahaz, or going over to Pilaku or Sulfur Mine. Those spots my Zerker would actually do pretty well at, but places like Basham's where I have to run a loop lap around the entire area, it is not very efficient for Zerker. He pulls not a lot of trash loot. Like without a loot scroll, he pulls maybe 40-30 mil an hour, which is really bad. With a loot scroll, it becomes a little bit better, including Agris as well. If you popped 3 trash per hour, which with the trash change, they reduced how much you get per kill, so now it's only 1. If you use like a loot scroll, it gets 2, and then if you use Agris, you can get 3, and that is the max, I believe. I could be wrong about that, don't quote me, but the point being is that the trash is now reduced to 1, so having a big hunky fucking Zerker that just runs around at the speed of mayonnaise, it's really just not good. However, I do have my Hashashin tagged, so his grind in succession is super speedy. He's mega fast, and he's a lot better than the Zerker. With no loot scroll, I shit you not, I pulled like 75 million. That is actually really great, because with a loot scroll, that's like on my Zerker before, like when I was, I think, around 261, that's about what I pulled in Achman. So with no loot scroll, I pulled the same amount as a lower tiered, Zerker character in Achman. That's actually really nuts that I can grind a place with no loot scroll and still pull a decent amount of money if my class allows me to do so. If we take a look at the trash loot that I have here, believe it or not, this is literally from no loot scroll at all. I got a fuck ton of Rosar weapons, some pluses, some just random, just crap everywhere. We got 3.4k trash, which is roughly around 49 million. We got a couple scrolls, which are actually sitting at about 1 mil right now. We got 8 Kafras, which is pretty nuts. Yeah, this is pretty good. I really can't complain about this with actually no loot scroll. If we were to go ahead and double this up, like let's say we add a loot scroll or Agris, right? So with 3.4k, if we add a yellow loot scroll, that's 6.8k per hour. And then if we add yellow plus Agris, that's 10.2k per hour, which Basham's I don't think uses a whole lot of Agris. So this is actually very efficient. I mean, realistically, with just a yellow loot scroll alone, that's 98 million with just a yellow loot scroll. 98 million. That is the same amount of money that I make at Star's End with like just trash loot in general. Granted, Star's End, we'll talk about that in a second, and why I don't necessarily think swapping to Valencia as a high tier geared player is necessarily a good idea, at least for Basham's anyway. But 98 mil per hour with just a yellow. That's fat. That's really fat. And then jumping up to 10.2k, like don't even get me started on that shit. I mean, shit, 140 some million per hour for yellow plus Agris. I mean, that's wild to me, because you can sit there for like a couple hours and just make bans all day. It's really nice. Another thing that I would like to mention about Bashams is that the XP there is really great, not necessarily for leveling, but for skill points. I'm on my hash and I was grinding there at the speed of sound, and I was getting like skill points just boom, 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 back to back. I was getting shit like a Drake album, bro. It was nuts. I was really pleased with how the XP was really flowing as I was grinding. It felt like I was getting rewarded with trash loot, plus it was the XP that I need for my Hashishin, because he's only at like 1100 skill points. By the time I was done with my Bassi grind, I had like almost 100. This shit was crazy. Now, if we take a look at Bassis, this is kind of not as good. So moving on to Basilisk Den, I didn't really bother to even record the whole like experience with Basilisk Den, but it's kind of dead now. I mean, it's better than what it was to a certain degree, but the reason Bassis was good, in my opinion, was the amount of Kafras you could get per hour, which could range anywhere from, at the bare minimum, of like 14 to 20, and then all the way to a very high 50. It was very RNG based, but you never really left Bassis per hour without 14 Kafras at the very minimum. And if you had a loot scroll running as well, you would pull like 25 bare minimum, and then upwards of like, 40 to 50, which is really, really good. And then the trash loot was actually not bad either, because you could pull, I think, like 15 to 20k per hour. If you were grinding in a 3-man with a super speed group, you could decimate those mobs and still make a lot of money. Like, it was almost 120 to 130 mil per hour, which you can technically still make that, but I just liked having a very good reliable Kafra spot, which now the difference is the trash loot is more viable, and you can make 80 mil per hour with like barely any Agris or loot scroll, whatever, and that's good. But if you want Kafras, you now have to break the statues, which means you have to extend rotations to at least 4 different statues depending on where and what area you're grinding in. So it's a bit more of a hassle. It's not really as optimal as I would like it to be. It's still good. It's still very good. If all you care about is trash loot and you're trying to just, go back and forth from crystal to crystal, it's still good and viable, and you can grind it. And yes, technically I would say it is better than what it was before, but the Kafras are nowhere near as good as what it used to be, so it's kind of sad. And the last place that I tested was Centaurs, and I used this with a yellow loot scroll, I believe, and I pulled about 3.4k trash per hour, which is not great, because once again I was capped by Zerker grind. Succession, even though it was faster than it definitely was faster than Awakening, the problem is he's just not as fast as some of the other classes. Like, to put things into perspective, if we compare my trash to one of my buddies in the Hammy's trash, that dude is crazy. He's on Awaken Nova and he can speed run the entire area so fast. He's pulling 300 mil per hour at Centaurs. At max for me, I pulled 150 with selling everything. He pulls 300 mil in trash loot. If we were probably to include his entire stock of garbage that he picks up there, he's probably upwards of like 400, 450 maybe, somewhere in that ballpark, which is absolutely insane. So on the correct class, you can actually abuse the fuck out of Centaurs and make hella money for no reason. But for me, on Succession Zerker, where you have to, run, stop, pound the ground, and then stop, it's just the mob density is not great. The movement, even though Zerker's speed is very, very optimal, it's not nearly as fast as what it should be, nor the attacks are very reliable, because you have to, speed, stop, speed, stop, speed, stop. Whereas, like, if you're Awakened Nova, you can literally just speed right through the fuck everything, and the only thing limiting you is your pets and how fast they pick up, which was another issue I was kind of running into. Not necessarily at Centaurs, but definitely Bashams, I was not picking up all the trash. So honestly, the best spot that I tested so far was Centaurs, especially comparing it to other friends and stuff that have really good grind classes for speed areas. Fucking Centaurs is crazy. If you have a really good class, you're going to make a lot of money here. So in conclusion, Basilisk Den, it's decent, it's reliable, it is kind of better than what it was, but I really miss the Kafras, I really do. And I don't like breaking the statues. It's just, I don't know, it's just not as fun anymore. Personal preference, I should say, but it is what it is. As far as Bashams go, it's actually decent money, especially with no loot scroll. You can actually make pretty good money here. With a loot scroll, you can make very good money here. Plus, it has very good XP for skills, so instead of going to polys or crescents, now there's a third area on the map where you can actually go and make some decent experience for your skills, because polys is usually crowded, crescents not really super crowded, but it is all the way out in buttfuck Egypt. But at least Bashams is closest to Altanova, so it's actually pretty reliable to go there. So I kind of like it. And Centaurs, this place is dummy thick. This place is dummy thick. If you have the right class, you're going to dominate this place, and you're going to completely outgrind anybody and anything, and you're going to pull a lot of money at Centaurs. Hopefully I can get to other areas and test them out and make a dedicated video to those, but at the moment I just kind of wanted to talk about the Valencia change and say that it's pretty positive. I will say that for newer players, this is great for you, but at the moment it's kind of going to be overran just for a while, because people are going to camp sulfur mines and Centaurs because they're incredibly good at the moment. So those places are going to be very hot zones, but places like Bashams, you're actually going to be pretty well off there and actually make some decent chunk of money. I guess before I end this video, I did want to talk about Star's End, and the reason I'm not really grinding the Valencia areas at the moment is because, look, I'm gonna put this on. Look, this is RNG carried right here. This is super RNG carried. This is 2 hours of Star's End that I did the other day, and I pulled 3 distos, 11k trash, a bunch of armor weapon stones, 3 BMCs. Like, this is absurd. This is completely absurd. Not everybody does this, and this doesn't happen regularly. At best, I pull like maybe a disto an hour or every couple hours. That is about where it is. But the point being is that Valencia, you can't do stuff like this. You can't get RNG carried to the point where you are making close to a bill per like 2 hours. It's just not, it just doesn't happen. So lately I've been just camping Star's End because it's completely empty, and it's really, really good because I get a nice peaceful grind, and you know, I'm making upwards of like 200 to 300, 400 mil just per hour. If I pull a disto, it's like 400 mil per hour. It's pretty crazy, especially with the Caphras on the rise right now. And if I sit there for an extra hour, it's such good money. It's such good fucking money. So even though Valencia is very good right now and very viable and it's super relevant, that doesn't mean Sakurai is dead. That doesn't mean Star's End's dead. That really doesn't change anything. You can still go to these spots, and especially for me as a slower grind character, it's actually better for me to stay at Star's End because he grinds better there because the mob density is so thick, and he's able to actually keep up and pull the trash that he's supposed to, rather than trying to run around places like Centaurs, Bashams. These places do not work for Berserkers. So me having an open spot at Star's End at all times is actually very nice. So that's the one thing I did want to point out about Star's End, is that these spots, super relevant. They're still good. You don't need to quit, especially if you're on a lower tier grind class. Like, let me tell you right now, Guardian, Bashams, probably not super great, especially not in comparison to other speed classes. Like, yeah, she can move somewhat fast, but she's not the fastest. But a character like Hashishin, Lon, they're going to speed run those places so fucking fast. So yeah, Star's End, don't worry about it. It's not dead. It's not dead in the water. If anything, people thinking that just going to leave the spots open, and you can go there, pull a rotation, and still make a lot of money per hour. So don't even worry about it. It's still very viable. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Yeah, she knows I'm the one. Yeah, she knows I don't need no kind, I don't need no